Welcome back. In this video, we'll explore how to control the flow of a C# program using decision-making structures like if, else, and switch, as well as loops that help us repeat actions efficiently. Control flow is what allows our programs to make decisions and execute different code depending on conditions. Instead of running all code sequentially, we can tell the program to do one thing under certain conditions and another when those conditions change. Loops, on the other hand, let us repeat tasks without writing redundant code. The if-else statement is the most basic way to make decisions in C#. It evaluates a condition inside the parentheses. If the condition is true, the first block of code runs. If it's false, the else block runs instead. In this example, if age is 18 or more, the program prints you are an adult. Otherwise, it prints you are a minor. When there are multiple possible values to compare, a switch statement can be a cleaner alternative to using multiple if-else conditions. Each case checks for a specific value, and when it finds a match, it executes the corresponding code. If no cases match, the default case runs. In this example, since day is 2, the program will output Tuesday. Now let's talk about loops. Loops allow us to execute a block of code multiple times without writing it over and over. This helps avoid repetition and makes our code more efficient. Let's look at the different types of loops available in C#. A for loop is ideal when we know exactly how many times we want to repeat a task. It consists of 3 parts: initialization, condition, and increment or decrement. In this example, I starts at 1, increments by 1 each time, and stops when it reaches 5. The program prints iteration 1 to iteration 5. The while loop runs as long as the condition inside the parentheses is true. In this example, the loop keeps printing count and the value of the variable c, while c is 5 or less, and increasing it each time. Be careful. If you forget to update the variable inside the loop, it may never stop running. A do-while loop is just like a while loop, except it always runs at least once before checking the conditions. This is useful when we need to ensure a piece of code executes at least once, like when asking for user input. In this example, number and the value of variable num prints at least one time, even if num is already greater than 5. Great! We've now covered the fundamentals of control flow in C#. We learned how if-else helps us make decisions, how switch case is useful when handling multiple conditions, and how loops allow us to repeat code efficiently. Now let's put this knowledge into action. We'll head over to Visual Studio and write some code to see how these concepts work in practice. Well, I have created a new project to practice decision making and loops. Same as before, it's console application for .NET Framework. First, let me explain this command for you. In C#, console.readline is used to take inputs from the user through the keyboard. Whenever we want the program to ask the user for information, we use console.readline. However, one important thing to note is that console.readline always reads input as a string, even if the user enters numbers. Look at this example. This command here, console.writeLine, enter your name, it prints enter your name in the console. In the second line, we declare a variable, name, and with console.readline, we're going to get input from the user from the console. And with this command, we're gonna print hello plus the name user entered. So here, whatever the user types will be stored as a string in the name variable, and we can then use it in our program. Let's run the program and have a look. Here we did print enter your name, and I'm gonna say like Alex, and then when I enter, it runs the next command. And next command was hello plus the name the user entered. When we need the user to enter a number like their age or day of the week, we must convert the string input into a number. This is where convert to int comes in. It takes a string and converts it into an integer. For example, in the first line, the program asks the user to enter their age. In here, with console.readLine, it reads the input as a string. With convert to int32, it changed the string into an integer, so we can perform math operation on it. And here the program calculates the age for next year and displays it. So whenever you take input from the user, always remember, console.readLine reads input as a string, and use convert to int if you need an integer. Let's run the program and see the result. Enter your age. I write like 25, and then when I enter, it says next year you will be 26 years old. It added 1 to the age user entered and printed to the console that next year you will be that years old. Now we are going to use the console.writeLine and console.readLine in our example for decision making and loops. Look at this example to practice if-else statement. This is like what we just practiced. With console.readLine, it gets input as a string, so we can store it in an int variable. Then the program checks if age is 18 or more to decide if the user is an adult or a minor. If the condition is true, it prints you are an adult. Otherwise, the else block runs and printing you are a minor. The if-else statement allows us to execute different code based on a condition. Let's run it and see the result. Enter your age. I'm gonna enter like 20, and it says you are an adult. I'm gonna run it again. This time I put 17, and it says you're a minor. So depending what age I enter, it says if you are an adult or you're a minor. Now let's see the switch statement. In this example, the user enters a number from 1 to 7, representing the days of the week. And with readLine, it gets that number from the console, and because the day is an integer variable, we need to convert it to integer. The switch statement checks the value of day and then matches the number to a corresponding day name. If the user enters a number outside 1 to 7, the default case prints invalid day. The switch statement is useful when we have multiple conditions and want a cleaner alternative to multiple if-else statements. Let's run this and see the result. Enter a number 1 to 7 for the day of the week. I enter 3, and it says the day is Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Let's run it again. I enter something like 10, and it says invalid day because it couldn't find the number 10 in any of these cases, so it goes to the default one and it prints invalid day. We've covered if-else statement and switch cases. Now let's see the loops. The first loop is for loop that we're gonna see the example here. As we discussed before, the for loop consists of 3 parts. One, initialization, that here it's a variable I, it's a type of integer, and it starts at 1. And the condition, Our loop runs while I is less than or equal to 5. So the I is less than or equal to 5 is the condition of our loop. And the update, the third part, is I++. It increments I by 1 after each iteration. And in the console, it will print iteration 1, iteration 2, and so on up to iteration 5. Let's run the program and see that. As you can see, it's iteration 1 up to 5. Let's change the condition here. If I change the 5 to like 8 and run the program, it goes from iteration 1 up to iteration 8. And depending on the program and what you needed, you can change the conditions. The for loop is best when we know exactly how many times the loop should run. Okay, now let's see the while loop. While loop is similar to for loop, but we mostly use it when we don't know exactly how many times the loop should run beforehand. Int count equals 1, it's like the initialization part of the for loop. And while count is less than or equal to 5, it's like the condition that we have in the for loop. And the third part of the for loop was the update that we can see that here. The while loop runs as long as the count is less than or equal 5. And each time it prints count 1, 2, etc. until the count variable reaches 5. Let's run the program and see the result. As you can see, it starts from count 1 until count 5. And if we change the conditions, like while count is less than or equal to 3, so this time it runs just 3 times. Count 1, 2, and 3. We mostly use while loop when we don't know exactly how many times the loop should run beforehand. So depending on what you need and what's the condition in your program, you can use for loop or while loop. Now let's see the last type of loop, do while loop. Do while loop has the initialization variable, and this is what to do in each loop, and the while part, that is the condition of the loop. This loop always runs at least once before checking the condition, and it prints number 1, 2 up to number 5. Even if variable num starts at a value greater than 5, the loop will run once. Let's see the result. The variable number is now 1, so it starts from 1 up to 5. As you can see, it prints number 1, 2 up to 5. Now let's change the value of variable num to like 6. So this condition is not true, but I'm going to show you that this do while loop runs at least one time. As you can see, it prints number 6 while the condition was not true. So, as I said before, depending on your program and what you need, you can use different type of loops. And use a do while loop when we always want the loop to execute at least one time. Great job! We covered decision making with if, else, and switch, and learned how we use loops like for, while, and do while to repeat action efficiently. If you mix them up, don't worry, practice makes perfect. In the next video, we will dive into methods and functions, which help us organize our code better. If you have any questions, drop a comment below and I'll be happy to help. Don't forget to subscribe for more C# tutorials. See you in the next lesson.